Hey everyone, welcome back to another live episode of the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show here in the Smoke In Studios. Guys, I cannot believe the show that we have for you tonight. I am so excited. I had to geek out a little bit, fanboy out, just like I did with Chaz last week. But this is a guy that I followed his career, watched a lot of his stuff from very early on, followed all the way through the Karate Kid series, obviously now with Cobra Kai. And I'm loving that a whole new generation of fans are finding and discovering the greatness that is John Kreese. And just super excited to have him on. We're going to talk a little bit about the Prodigal Son, and we're going to show some box art. We're going to talk about a little bit of his career, as well as they've got a event in Malibu that we'll let Paulie and Marty talk to you guys all about. So um, hopefully everything is coming through okay. And let's see here. Yeah, got nothing really else to talk about. Okay, awesome. So sorry, guys, little nervous here. All right. So
I'll
fantastic.
be
How you
there.
doing, Martin?
What's up, guys?
How you doing, Paulie?
What's up, Marty? What's going on, brother?
Well, I just can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you.
Perfect. I just got to say thank you so much, Marty, for spending the night with me. This is a huge honor. Again, as somebody that's been just following so much of your movies, from Karate Kid to Rambo, this I should say First Blood Part Two, Cagney and Lacey, early stuff. Like it's just an honor to have you on the show. And boy, I never would have thought this show 4 years ago when I started would have had me talk to you and been able to have you on. So appreciate it very much for spending the night. And Paulie, yeah, thanks for being here too, I guess. Just kidding with you, brother. So Marty, I want to kind of start with obviously the main reason why you're here, which is the Prodigal Son cigar release. So, for anyone that's watching that doesn't know, the Prodigal Son cigar has a complimentary comic, soon to be graphic novel. Can you kind of just tell everybody a little bit of the backstory around how the cigar was developed?
Well, how this cigar was developed was, Paulie met us in New York when we were creating the vision of the comic book, and we had written 4 treatments. I did of it. I wanted to do a western after Cobra Kai, and this western is about a 12-year-old boy who bonds with an old killer played by myself, and this guy's killed everything, and he's an old gunfighter, and it was called The Prodigal Son, and it's a wonderful story about a 12-year-old bonds with this gunfighter, and they exchange human values together, and the boy becomes a survivalist, and I become a human being, and the cigar, it was a natural because I love the West, and my partner here, Paulie, loves the West, and created the cigar as the same name as the comic book, which will eventually become a TV series. So it's called The Prodigal Son, and it's something that um, Paulie really spent most of the time blending it and allowing me to try different cigars. And I really, like cigars. I find cigars truly relax me, and they're elegant, and they're different, much different than people smoking cigarettes. And really good, flavorful cigar that's not necessarily bitter is just wonderful to sit and smoke and have some wine or brandy or you know just a good book, a good script, and I guess it all began for me with cigars years ago with Royal Jamaican when I first got to Hollywood. I liked Royal Jamaican Cigars, but it was my first cigar. And then slowly I've graduated. Prodigal Son is really terrific because it's the right size. It's got a great label. The box is unique, and it just fits in with my Western heritage.
Well, I gotta say too, like for anyone that follows you in your social media, you always have a cigar. I think 85-90% of your pics, you have a cigar, and I love it because like you are a true cigar guy. You're not somebody that just picks up a cigar here and there or does it to look tough. Like you're a true cigar guy, and for you to, and again, if they've been following you for a while, then they would know that you smoke a lot of Cubans. And for you to make a new world, if we're going to title it that, style cigar, and put your name on this, that says a lot from somebody that has really, really high end taste, really high end flavor profile, to then develop a cigar in the new world format that hits your flavor profile. And you chose Paulie to do it. Everybody, if you've not had the ability to smoke this thing yet, it is fantastic. You can go on, I think Abe has it already, right, Paulie?
Abe has them. You can go to lcgcigars.com.
Here's what the
And
box looks like.
Yeah, I mean, look at that box. It's absolutely very complimentary to the comic cover as well. It's in that very similar feel.
Yeah, it really is, and it's
so I just cracked this box open. This is my third today. So I'm only basically smoking Prodigal Son right now. It's probably my favorite, and it's just an amazing cigar. So this will go back into the box until later because I don't smoke in the house. But
He was
yeah,
about
it's an
to.
amazing
He was
cigar.
about to.
Undisclosed blend. Part 2, we will disclose the blend for rating purposes because I have a lot of people trying to rate the cigar, and they're asking me about the blend. This was made in Dominican Republic, and a fantastic factory, Chico Rivas factory. Um, Sanj Patel is a partner of Chico Rivas, so it was a great collaboration. The second part that me and Marty do, and we're working on it. I went out and I got a factory put together over in Tampa, Santiago. We'll be making part 2, and it's going to be fantastic. But this blend has to is selling out fast. It's almost all sold out, and we just crushed it. Marty's such a classic character that he's just an icon. So 4 years ago when he posted, "Oh, I'm going to be doing this cigar with La Casa Grande," and I gave him a little band with his face on it, very very tongue in cheek, Cobra Kai, and it was just a little gift to him. And he must have got 100,000 likes and people saying, take my money. So we knew it was going to be a hit, but you had to make it great, because if you didn't make it great, then you knew it was a cash grab.
He was
And
going to
Marty's
kick
not
your
going to
ass
do anything
too.
that's not fantastic.
Well, yeah, he would have kicked your ass too. So let's be honest.
Oh, Marty, forget it.
No mercy on that. No, it's so the cigar's being really widely accepted. Now, you had mentioned a part 2. I know there's 4 parts to the comic. Are we looking at a potentially 4-part release in the
Oh yeah, this is
cigars?
going to be a 4-part series.
Okay.
No, Martin's in the cigar business now until he doesn't want to be. Martin's in the cigar business. He's a player, and that's true story. You don't have to ask him to go, beg him to go to a meet and greets and stuff because he loves cigar lounges.
Oh yeah, what do you mean?
And
I get to sit there and
feet.
smoke cigars the whole time?
Sorry?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Like he gets to sit there and smoke cigars the whole time. Again, a true cigar guy. Like Martin, what's the most cigars you've smoked in a day?
Well, I really try to keep it. You know, having a cigar, I would say two cigars. I don't smoke. You know, there are some people. I remember when I grew up in Brooklyn, you would always see the guy in the delicatessen. You know, the Jewish delicatessen I would go to and get lox and bagels and all this stuff. And the guy, oh, he always had a cigar hanging out of his mouth, and it was it wasn't lit because he was, you know, dealing the whitefish and the olives and the lox, and he was, you know, making, you know, in those days it was, you know, small little delicatessen, and he'd make you these little, you know, cartons to go of all these wonderful, wonderful appetizers. Anyway, so you couldn't really smoke there, but he always had this cigar hanging out of his mouth whenever I saw him. And, you know, it wasn't good for him. The resin of not having a lit cigar from an unlit cigar is what really, you know, pollutes you, and it's toxic. So smoking a cigar is the way to go. And, you know, smoking a cigar, I don't think I thought about it till I got to Hollywood. I did smoke cigars when I was acting in New York, but when I came out here, there was just something about the climate and the beach and the water and having access to all of that that you didn't have access in Brooklyn or Manhattan. And it was just easy. It was more relaxing an environment, Hollywood, California in itself. So I think I just enjoyed it. Plus, I always felt it to be noble. I always felt the elegance of having a cigar, more so than a pipe, because a pipe is not really great for your teeth, and a pipe smells great, but it doesn't taste good. You know, it doesn't really taste good, the inhale of a pipe tobacco. So I just cultivated the cigar. I didn't smoke very much at the beginning, but now I think as I've gotten older, and John Kreese, they just, the first episode I came in the show, they had me smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what was really funny was that the very first scene where I say, you know, the real story has only just begun. You know, when I'm introduced at the very top, I think it was episode 10, season one. And I come in there and I had, I know that the prop guys often buy cheap cigars. And I couldn't, yeah, smoking a cheap cigar would just, I couldn't remember my lines. So I brought two Cubans with me, and I didn't want to use them because you have to cut the cigars up into for continuity, which means you have, if you do a scene 5 times, you have to have the same size cigar in your fingers each time. You can't all of a sudden have a fresh cigar and take two when you started with a little 1 inch stub. So you don't like to cut up Cuban cigars, but I couldn't smoke what they gave me. So luckily, I brought these Cubans. I cut them up and I smoked them 4 takes, and it was done. But if I would have smoked what they gave me as a prop, John Kreese would have been Joanna Kreese. You know? It would have been, you know, floating in the room. You know,
See,
would have
again,
passed out.
a true cigar guy. So I want to ask you, not too many people I think are aware of this, but you actually were a substitute teacher in Brooklyn before you started acting. Now I'm really curious to you, where was it because you just like were like, I'm fighting these kids anyways, I'm gonna go fight on screen, or like what influenced your path from substitute teacher to world renowned movie actor?
I don't want to blow your imagination, but I was never a substitute teacher. And that came up on,
Where is that? Why did that come up then? Like
I have no idea.
in research?
came up. I don't think it's Wikipedia. I think it came up on IMDb. And for the same reason they have me a year older than I am, no matter how many times you communicate with them, they don't change anything.
Well, I apologize. I was
Well,
doing
no, it's
research.
okay.
I saw it like 7 places.
Well, how about when other teachers ask you, teachers, you go back to your old school and you're giving a seminar in the auditorium, and then these teachers come up to you and they say, "Wow, you were a substitute teacher, and now you're starring in this and that. And you've got so much to say about the business, the movie business." And my heart breaks to tell them, "I'm sorry, darling. I didn't really start off as a teacher, you know."
Wow. Well, I put open mouth, insert foot.
It's all
Um,
right. It's all right. We still like,
it's like
still
every
like.
source. Yeah, it's like 10 different sources I looked at all said it.
I know.
So it was like, okay.
Then there's a story that repeats itself all the time about Bill Hader being driven around by me, and then I went into a fast food place to get myself some food and asked him if he wanted something, and I said, and he said yes, and I went in there and I came out without any food for him, eating my own food and telling him to drive around the block over and over again because I don't know my lines and I don't want to go into the set without knowing my lines. A total fabrication. I have never been in a car with him, not that I can remember. And, maybe my memory's going to the full extent, but I would never go in. A driver asking me to pick him up something in a fast food place, I would never go in and not come out with what he asked for.
Well, that
I think the hint there was when he said he wanted to go to McDonald's. I don't think Martin eats at McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just don't see it.
Well, I would.
Maybe a hot chicken place, but not.
I actually, I wouldn't have led a driver to a fast food place, then offered, then not bring the food out, and then have him drive around so he gets in trouble for bringing me late because I wanted to learn lines. I mean,
you've been doing this way too long. My guess is it doesn't take you much to learn lines anymore.
well, the bottom line is, Marty, the bottom line is that even if you're first up in the morning, you're in makeup, you can learn your lines. You're If you're not the first up for a scene, you have some more time to learn your lines. Even if you were out all night, you know, and even if the lines were tough to memorize, you still find time as an actor to work on. It's irresponsible, one should learn their lines when when you get the script. But I I would never like it.
Well, no, that's that.
It's
Well,
not my style.
well, here we go. So here's one that definitely is true. You've played everything from honest cops and Cagney and Lacey to villains, and John Kreese, First Blood 2, Part 2. How hard is it for you to switch between good guy, bad guy, and to not be like typecast in that certain role?
Well, Hollywood is really rough because you do something successful and they think that's all you can do because it's a commercial success. So, then you do a couple of movies that don't are not received as well, and they're leading men, they're vulnerable characters, which is what I really love to play. Season 6, where I cried in the arms of Johnny Lawrence and, redeemed myself at the end of season 6. That's what I wanted to do from the very beginning. And I only signed on to the series because I said to the writers, when we first met, I said, if you make this character different than Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3, I'm interested. I want him to be written vulnerably and have different flashbacks of why he is the way he is. But I didn't want to play him like I did the tough guy in Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3. There wasn't enough. You just can do tough guys so long, and the real interesting villains. I hate to use the word villain because John Kreese was just misunderstood. He wasn't a villain,
Correct.
you know. I mean, Terry Silver is a villain,
Yeah, Terry. So yes, yes.
you know, and that's why I had to kill him. But you know, the bottom line is that redemption is a fascinating thing to see for a villain, and then you they usually die. You know, they're usually killed, and God knows how many westerns. Look at the Wild Bunch; they all die.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and they're all redeemed by the end of the movie. You know, they're saving all those villagers and destroying, you know, the federales of Mexico at that time. So it's always interesting to play those characters. So I like going in that direction. I got a lot of it written for me in Cobra Kai. Um, and I've been just finished a movie called Unarmed, which was all about a very sympathetic coach in the MMA world. And he quotes Teddy Roosevelt. There's a wonderful there's a wonderful speech that Teddy Roosevelt wrote in 1910 about called The Man in the Arena. And it's all about going in the arena, whatever the arena is. Martial arts, karate, the Civil War, doesn't matter. Spanish American War. Just going out there and doing your very best, giving the very best effort you can. And if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. But the bottom line is you've given your best. And I read that in the movie, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. And the director gave me a little charm here with some of it written out. And it's just more interesting to do that. Create a backstory for your character. And hopefully, it's a little more vulnerable than just one dimensional tough guy.
Well, then it see, it's so you had obviously probably never expected after Karate Kid the movie series ended to come back decades later and revise the John Kreese role. Was there any kind of feeling in your mind of like, I'm nervous about doing this because I don't want this. I want this to be taken for real, not to be taken as like a gimmick or trying to like revise like Friends or the bringing of it back. But then it kind of blew up, right? And it took off, and it was just what I feel like everybody needed. Were you a little shocked at the acceptance by a completely new generation that probably a lot of them went back and had to watch the movies after they saw the first season of Cobra Kai?
Well, it went like this. You know, the writing was good.
Mm-hmm.
The three characters, Josh, John, and Hayden, wrote very well. They wrote Hot Tub Time Machine. They wrote Harold and Kumar. They were really good writers, and they sold Ralph Macchio, Billy Zabka, and myself on what they were planning to do. The show to be seen through the eyes of Johnny Lawrence. And I bought it. I liked it. And they were going to write vulnerably for me as well. But how the show became so popular was a phenomenon. Uh, Kids started watching it while it was on YouTube. YouTube didn't do very much promo. And after the first 2 years, Netflix picked it up. But the kids were watching the show. The parents would go to see what the kids were watching, and the kids saying, "We're watching this new show, Cobra Kai." And then the parents would see that it's Billy, myself, and Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
And they would tell the kids, "Do you want to see what we watched when we were your age back in 35 years ago?" Because it was 35 years. So the kids said, "Well, okay, show us." And they showed them Karate Kid 1, Karate Kid 2, and the kids fell in love with these characters, got to see what their parents loved 35 years ago. And then the entire show called Cobra Kai became a family event, became family television, where all the family could get around and watch the show. which doesn't happen. There's no family TV, no
Mm-mm.
family. The days of Ed Sullivan Show, the days of you know of the those family sitcoms, they're just
Like Home Improvement and
yeah,
Andy Griffith's show and stuff
yeah,
like
all
that.
those shows from early on, early television, all the way through the '60s. Everybody in the '60s watched westerns. I mean, westerns. There were 35 westerns on primetime television
Mm-hmm.
in the '60s, and then that kind of blew out. It was overdone. But the bottom line is, good television is based on good writing, and we had good writing, and the fact that you know COVID happened, everybody was staying at home. You know, actors weren't staying at home because actors, people weren't working in their offices, but actors are so used to not being employed that we were home watching the show because we weren't working. So it was kind of a phenomenon that we were used to. And the show became popular during that period of time and then exploded. And it just was, you know, the writers loved bringing in people from the three movies. They loved that. And they loved bringing in teenagers. So it appealed to everyone. So to answer your initial question, I wasn't surprised because I was always impressed with these writers and their talent. And so many people would say, well, you have a successful movie. People tried to do, I remember David Soul trying to do Casablanca as a series years ago. And Casablanca was probably my favorite film. And you cannot improve on Casablanca. It is the perfect movie.
Yes, I
Humphrey
was gonna say
Bogart,
perfect movie.
That's a
you know,
great movie.
So how in the world can you do a TV series? You just don't get those writers anymore. You don't get everybody. They had staff writers back in the '40s writing for people like James Stewart, writing for Cary Grant, writing for John Wayne, writing for Humphrey Bogart. They had 5, 6, 8 writers writing for each one of those stars under contract. It was a different game, totally different game, and they they came to bloom, these writers, and the show bloomed, and that's how it all turned out.
Now, I obviously, if people follow you and follow what you post, they know you have a very much a huge love for westerns. You were in a very big western movie with Kevin Costner. You played Ed Ross, and Wyatt Earp. How did your love of westerns get brought to that character? I mean, that had to kind of be amazing for you to play a historical western character.
Well, when Larry Kasdan gave me that part, I wanted to play Virgil Earp. I wanted to play what Michael Madsen did, and he calls me up himself and he says, "I want you to play this part." And I said, "Yeah, but there's not much there. It's a couple of scenes." He says, "No, it's a pivotal part where back in 1869, when this guy was around, and so was Wyatt Earp, Wyatt Earp didn't know he had this power, this luck, this blessing to be a lawman and be a lawman that stayed alive, you know,
Never to be
and
shot by a bullet.
never to be shot by a bullet." And he says, "I need someone really strong for this scene where he takes your gun and feels his power, goes outside, fireworks and all that, and he, takes me down with a cue ball." But he didn't know his power. Kevin and I talked about this often. That Wyatt Earp did not know his power until that scene. Then he felt his power. It's like getting a great review with um, let's say you're working with Sean Connery, with Peter O'Toole, and you get a great review working with them. Just like my son did this movie with John Voight and Kelsey Grammer about firefighters. You know, he just you get a great review with really good actors. It takes you to another level emotionally, and it just it all just kind of worked for me, And I cried when I left that set. I didn't want to leave that set, and I was very upset, because this was what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to make westerns, and I just finished my role in there. It was over, and I think when I did a screen test called The Adventures of Lieutenant Blueberry, which was a comic book in all over the world, but never came here. It was a graphic novel, but it never came here. And it was written by Jean Giraud, who was a marvelous, marvelous artist, went under the pen name Mobius, and a man named Jean-Michel Charlier wrote all the dialogue. And I tried to do it as a movie, and I screen tested for it. All my partners would have been French, and it was just a great way to make the American Western with French partners, because there's a different twist. It's like a Sergio Leone twist. And unfortunately, it didn't happen because westerns in the '80s were not popular, and you couldn't raise any money to do it.
Now, I'm curious about that. What's your take on it? Because you do have such a love for westerns, and you've been a big. I'm the same way, all the way from the old stuff, John Wayne, like the '30s, all the way up. I watched that all with my grandfather. The old Sergio Leone's, the spaghetti westerns. Why do you think westerns kind of went out in the '80s? Was it we just kind of all the really good actors just kind of outgrew the roles a lot, and like the classic western actors from the '60s and '70s just weren't wanting to do it? Or where do you think that division happened? Because I feel like everything was a western and then nothing for a long time until like the '90s.
The statistic that was in Cowboys and Indians magazine was from 1921 to 1967. One of every three movies that was produced in Hollywood was a Western. So you had 35 Westerns on primetime TV in the 60s. And then by, 67, 70, it was an overexposed genre. You couldn't find any more stories to do, except when a big star wanted to make a Western, or you had Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know, Robert Redford, may he rest his soul. But you had that movie was a road movie. That movie was two guys in love with each other.
Yeah.
It was a road movie. That's all it was, and they just were always running from the law, and that was it. And the charm of them playing with each other. I mean, originally they wanted Marlon Brando and Steve McQueen for that movie, and it just, it was that and probably the Wild Bunch about the same time, 68, 69. There just weren't many being made unless you were a big star like Paul Newman, and he wanted to make the Western, and maybe a couple in the '70s. You had Josie Wales. He could make the Western because he was Clint Eastwood, and he directed Josie Wales.
Yeah.
So he got it made, and he always came in on budget. So, you had to have, and then True Grit was like, 67 as well. You had John Wayne doing that. So,
Mhm.
But we're talking about maybe 10 movies in a decade because it was an overused genre. And now it comes back with Taylor Sheridan doing it all, and the writing is superb.
It is.
It's
It really
superb.
is. It's really, really nice.
His 1883.
It's
It
amazing.
doesn't get much better than that,
No.
And it really is superb. And, you know, Yellowstone is good. But when he writes, you know, historical things, it's wonderful. All his characters are in turmoil all the time. All his characters are always in such pain. But he's such a marvelous writer, and he's such a terrific historian. that, you know, and we just try to do the work. Prodigal Son should have as good writing, because if you don't write well, if the same problems don't occur for these kids while watching the show circa 1875, you've got to have the same identifications and problems that the kids have now. They had them then, and that's how you have to write it. That's how you have to write it. You write it so that people can identify with it. That's why Cobra Kai was so hip. Everybody could identify with Cobra Kai, all the kids, because of the bullying. Initially, I would ask people why you like Karate Kid 1. They would say one of three things. They would say, we were bullied as a kid, we had a romance that didn't work out as a teenager, or we were a fish out of water and our parents moved around a lot. So make the story real for kids who are so hip these days, so smart. You got to make good product, and the show will sustain itself.
Do you think Karate Kid Part One was a perfect movie? I think so.
A perfect movie. Yeesh.
Annie
Perfect
Hall.
movie. It was pretty
Uh,
good.
I
I mean,
think it's one of the perfect. Quentin Tarantino got some off the wall perfect movies, and so I think I should too. I think Casablanca, Annie Hall, those type of movies are perfect. But I believe that Karate Kid is. It's not because I'm
I
friends
think
with him.
I think Karate Kid
I
is
think it's a perfect movie.
I think Karate Kid is in my age group, growing up in that time, is the best coming of life movie made while I've been alive, as
but
far as coming of age.
you growing up talking about ancient Rome, you know, uh,
Wow, thanks,
we
Marty.
didn't have we didn't have, we didn't have movies in ancient Rome, so
But I
But
still think I agree with, because I think I know what he's talking about. He's referring to, it's got every aspect of it. It's got the comedy, it's got the bullying, it's got the standing up for the lady, it's got the winning. And speaking of winning, I just got to throw this out there, Martin. I'm really curious about this with you. Did you hear that Charlie Sheen was called originally for this role of of Danny LaRusso?
yeah, I there was a lot of actors brought in. For my role, they I know my friend Robert Davi was brought in, John Glover. They even thought of Toshiro Mifune to be there, but he came in, saw Jerry Weintraub and John Avildsen with his entourage from Japan, and he didn't speak really good enough English. But he was wrong, because he was wrong for the part. But I mean, why people get roles is all bizarre.
Well, it would have been a completely different movie if Charlie Sheen would have been in it. That's for sure. Not good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying it would have been. It would. I think. I don't know that we would have been blessed with Cobra Kai the way we have. And I definitely think Cobra Kai has been, like, movie to TV show, probably one of the best transitions from a movie to a TV show. Period.
Yeah,
Where the spinoff.
you're right, because most people think from a hit movie, you're not going to get a hit TV show.
Mm-mm.
God knows it's been tried many
Well,
times.
they tried with a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah,
that went one season and then done. And you guys are walking red carpets. I mean, you guys are everywhere for this. So that's just, it's been a lot of fun to just see this kind of grow back up again and really kind of take off. It's just been a lot of fun for us that grew up watching, you doing this role. So um I am really curious, with your son following in your footsteps as an actor, what's one of the greatest, not greatest, but what's something that just makes you feel good every single time you think of the success your son is having in this, right? Because that's another thing that you don't see a lot of, is like family acting sides where you see the dynasties, yeah, but father son usually is not as widespread inside the acting world, but your son seems to be doing really, really well with it.
Well, he has a show on Tubi now, and it's called President Down. And he plays a CIA agent in charge of the president. And she's a woman, and someone's really tampering with her ticker, and she has these heart attacks. And he drives this movie. I I flew in one day last week and surprised him totally in the screening room. I just flew in, hid out for the day last Saturday. I wanted to see him because I had seen the movie on Tubi, and I wanted to see it on the big screen and see the quality he had to drive this movie from the beginning, like a movie star. And so I said, I'm going to go. I arrived, flew out from Nashville, flew out Saturday morning, got there Saturday morning, and hid out for the day. Had the PR guy just reserve a seat next to Jesse, and then she got up, vacated the seat. I walked up to him and tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Is this seat available, sir? Can I sit here?" And of course, he broke out in tears. But we watched this movie, and I watched my son be Cary Grant. You know, he can do romance, and it's not because I'm a dad and he's my son. I've watched this boy act from the age of 18, where he went off and did Project Columbine off Broadway in New York from Hollywood. And the colors, I don't have those colors. He has the colors where he can be vulnerable and charming, like Mel Gibson. And for me, it was always hard to do that. I cry at supermarket openings. I mean, I really like that, that end of the spectrum emotionally. But to do the charming Cary Grant stuff that Mel Gibson does so well, it's tough for me. Jesse does all three. Does incredible action, does incredible charm and vulnerability, and and does, the tough guy. So it's really very fortuitous for me to observe this and see my son grow because he's come a long way. I remember correcting him in audition during the process of different things, and he wasn't as good, obviously, as he is now because he's taps into his instrument voluntarily. He doesn't have to push. He doesn't. I always wanted to be Steve McQueen. For the first 20 years of my life, I wanted to be Steve McQueen as an actor. And one day, it was okay to be Martin Kove. I don't even know where it happened. I think it happened when they were born. I realized that I had twins, and it was okay. It was okay to be me when the camera rolled. But Jesse has always eased into it with grace, lots of grace. And you watch that show and you talk about it. President's Down on Tubi, and this new movie with John Voight. It's another very emotional piece. It's about firefighters.
Well, looking back, you obviously did Prodigal Son with your son, Jesse. Um, Looking back, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from creating Prodigal Son together? And did it strengthen that father son bond? Or did you guys kind of have to learn to work? Okay, now I'm working directly with dad, and I've got to learn to be creative with my son type deal. So, what were some dynamics around creating that with your son?
You mean creating Prodigal Son
Prodigal
together?
son, yeah.
Well, he couldn't. There's the boy, 12. There's the old gunfighter, me. There's a woman who's in there, and uh, when he has long hair and a mustache, he's the bad guy, and he's so good looking. You wouldn't cast him as the bad guy if he shaved and, as in Prodigal Son, rather as in President's Down, he's a CIA fellow and he's the leading man and clean and all that. But he said, Daddy, I could do this he's actually my son who ostracizes me and kicks me out of the gang because he feels I'm getting too old. And we have a lot of problems within the relationship, which all come out when I'm with this young boy of 12. And it's a restructure of a relationship with this 12-year-old that didn't happen with the kid, with my son. And it's great stuff to play as an actor. You know, love-hate relationship, how much you hate yourself for destroying your son and making him part of your nebulous, negative, vindictive group of men called the gang. You know. So he said, let me do the bad guy. I said, okay. It's another stretch because it's a bad guy. I'm Bambi compared to this guy.
Well, for those of you guys that are interested in the comic book, you can find them online. They are sold out at a lot of locations. You can still find it. You can go to smokin.com and pick up the Prodigal Son. You can go to La Casa Grande Cigars and pick up the Prodigal Son as well. Where
By the
do
way, Jesse, his son, is involved with these cigars because he's part of the comic, and
Mhm.
he's also part of the graphic novel. He's part of the upcoming scripted series, and he'll be starring in that. And it's a Cove family cigar, so it's kind of like a dynasty, as far as acting and also in cigars. Jesse's very much involved with this. He's an avid cigar smoker. He knows everything about cigars. Brilliant actor. Um, the kid could play Captain America, could play Batman tomorrow, and I've seen him on a Hallmark movie where he just, like Marty said, very vulnerable, very classy, very charming, and I love him. He's one of the greatest guys I ever met, Jesse Cove.
What's
Uh,
interesting, what's interesting is he's so humble,
yeah,
lots of integrity, and he's not, he's a kid that went to Beverly Hills High School. That could be a big mistake, and he has never lost that humility,
never.
that logic in one's life. That sometimes coming to movie sets, I've taken him to movie sets in India, Bulgaria, you know, when he was 10 years old. And he loved it. And he always played with cameras as a child, always set up soldiers with cameras and would shoot them and create all the sets we've seen in famous westerns. He'd create he'd create them in the garden, and it was all handwriting was on the wall. It was like another Marty Cove, and but I never pushed the business. I just wanted him to find it for himself because it's such an intolerable evil business. That, that, that the bottom line is you gotta have the tough skin to keep moving forward.
Well, that leads me into my next question here is from obviously 70s cult films you've done to 2020s up to now 2020s cameos and TV shows. What's been the biggest change that you've noticed in Hollywood's action movie landscape, and how has that affected the roles that you choose?
Well, number one, you get spoiled by good writing. Cobra Kai had really good writing, so whenever you pick up something, you really, you know, it's almost like they say Marty Cove's a pain in the ass because he wants to fix everything. I don't think today's product should be written haphazardly. I think it's got to be written with a lot of style and current events. I don't mean current events in the newspaper. I mean a lot of emotions that people are feeling now, what they're
Situational,
feeling,
yeah.
what they're feeling currently about life, about their children, about politics, about entertainment. You've got to pull those real emotions out and put them on screen. In the past, I think, it was different. Everything after World War II was escapism, and people were very happy in the 50s. And, you would have terrific movies that people were very, very interested in seeing. Gunfight at the OK Corral, Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas. You have Brian Keith. You have those people don't exist much anymore. Those types, and we lack that. We lack those charismatic characters like Burt Lancaster, like Kirk Douglas. You miss a lot of those character actors like Edward, like Ernest Borgnine, Warren Oates. You miss a lot of that. And the thing is, somehow we've got to gravitate back into that, not special effects graphic movies where the graphic design is the star.
Yeah.
I know that kids have really stimulated imaginations, and it's hard to satisfy their entertainment level because they're very sophisticated when they go into the movie. And yet, it's very possible. I went in to see a movie here in Nashville. I didn't like it. I won't mention what it was, but I left. In 30 minutes, I said, "What's playing in one of the other theaters?" And she told me the Bob Dylan movie that James Margolin directed.
Yep.
And I said, "Okay," I went in there. Great movie. Terrific picture. And I walked outside, and there was about 10 kids, 15, 16 years old. And they were Cobra Kai fans, so we got through that. We love you, so blah, 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 But I said, "What movie did you go see?" And they said, it was the story of Bob Dylan. And I must have spent 30 minutes with them outside. And they were
Wow.
so articulate about the movie. They really were as articulate as if you were critiquing Star Wars, if you were critiquing Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was like they were there. They understood the music. They understood Bob Dylan. They understood all of that stuff that happened in the early 60s. And they were fascinated by it. And these were Tennessee high school students right there, 15 years old, 16 years old, half a dozen of them. So if you appeal to their intellect, whether you're making an action picture or you're making, a Hallmark movie that I did with my son, as long as you appeal to something that's in reality for these kids, that's part of their world, they'll stick with you. They will stick with your movie. And sometimes Hollywood forgets that because Hollywood wants the quick fix. Got a lot of special effects, got a lot of action, a lot of explosions. Okay, we'll greenlight that. I don't think that works anymore. We've seen a lot of big $100 million movies tank.
Yeah, I think we're becoming desensitized to the big explosion side of it. We're wanting more of an in-depth uh, monologue or dialogue to it. Maybe not 200 pages the way Quentin Tarantino is known for writing, but I mean, again, Tarantino, just incredible actor. Not saying anything. I'm just saying his movies have a tendency to have a ton of dialogue. But I mean, there's some of the best movies out there. I mean, you were in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What was that like working with Quentin Tarantino?
Well, it doesn't get better than that. I remember walking up to him before I shot the movie. I was doing Cobra Kai, and he was a big Cobra Kai fan. And I drove him nuts about trying to be in Hateful Eight and Django, trying to be into a Western with him. And I walked up to him during the party at his office, and I said, "Quentin, did you offer me this part because I drove you nuts for 5 years trying to do a movie with you, or because I'm hot from Cobra Kai?" And he, long pause, big smile, and he said to me, a little bit of both. And yet, at the same time, I had such a good time. You get a sense of how much the people enjoy working with him. He says to me, at my last take, he says, Marty, I want one more. I don't really need it, but I want one more. Turns around to the crew of 200 people and says, and why? And the entire crew in unison says, because we love to make movies. So you get support like that. And little did he know that I had a double rig holster in my car. This double rig holster made by Arvo Ojala, who made all the holsters for the Westerns in the 60s. These great rigs. And I was doing Charlie's Angels back in 1977, guest starring. And I just got to Hollywood like 2 years earlier. And I kidnapped him in Charlie's Angels. And anyway, I walked into his trailer and he's fast drawing in front of the mirror. And he was into the Western, and this cat was fast. He was really fast. And he knew how much I love the West. So he gives me this double rig leather, hand carved leather. So I had it forever. And I said, if I have a good time on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm going to give this to Quentin Tarantino, because that holster sat in my saddle for ages. I didn't do anything with it. Sammy Davis Jr. had a 29 waist, So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I gave it to him, and he put it in the movie in Al Pacino's office, and at the premiere, he says, wasn't it I think it was the audio premiere, one of the premieres. He says, Marty, did you see it? Did you see it? And I said, what? See what, Quentin? He says, the holster, I put it right above Al Pacino's head in his office. And I said, oh, yeah. And it doesn't matter how much dialogue the guy writes. If you can stay in his movies and not be edited out,
yeah,
it's a feather in your cap, because he's absolutely brilliant. And he loves making movies, and you love making a movie for him.
Oh, and we all love watching him. I mean, he's doing 10 and out. He's got one more. But so I know we only got a little bit more time with you. I think this might be a fun question for you. Let me see here. Let me see. I wrote it down here. I normally don't do any prep for this show, and the one time I did prep, I found out a story about you that bit me in the ass that wasn't true. About you being...
You always, people like to talk about people, and God knows how many stories I hear about other stars, and I say to myself, I don't think that's true.
Well, I was shocked when I heard it.
Well, it's really funny. It came up only a couple of weeks ago on, I forgot where, and I forgot where I was doing some promotion for something, and I remember at a Comic-Con. You know what I used to do when I was in college? They didn't have a really good drama department in my college, so I would go around and audition to other universities in New York to do other plays. And one time I went to Hofstra, and I auditioned for Heartbreak House by George Bernard Shaw, and I got the lead. And I didn't go to the university. I was just like a phantom who came in. And theater departments are so cliquey. They did research. They found out I wasn't a member of the faculty. I wasn't a member of the student body. So I get to the first rehearsal, and I'm ready to go. And I think I was like 21, 20. And there's a black line right through my name. And I said to the director, what's the matter? What happened? He says, Mr. Kove, you need to be in attendance in the university in order to be part of the productions. So my heart was broken. Years later, I'm at a Comic-Con, I think last year, I told this story to a woman who was signing something because she had a Hofstra sweatshirt on. She said, I'm a teacher at Hofstra. I said, you're kidding. She says, that's a great story. She says, would you come to Hofstra and address the auditorium? And I said, sure. She called my manager, and they couldn't afford the plane fare. I said, if you fly me there, I'll do it. I'll stay with my cousins or whatever. She says, well, we don't have it in the budget for a plane fare. And so she said, but we'll try and figure something out. And I never heard from her again, But I brought that up because, you just love theater and you love stories, and many, many stories that came up somewhere else, and it was the truth. And it comes up when you're 19, 20 years old. Whoever knows that you auditioned for parts in other universities that you weren't in attendance of? Someone's got to really do research on your life to find that one.
This is very true. This is very true. No, that's funny. So you weren't able to be at the play because you didn't attend the university. It'd have been great if you would have ran into that teacher later in life and be like, should have had me in your play.
Well, theater departments, especially in any university, they're pretty cliquey.
Yeah.
So, you all of a sudden get the lead. I mean, even in high school, I remember wanting the lead in a couple of different plays because I was always in the senior shows, and I didn't get the lead because I was busy acting. I wasn't really being the character. I was busy doing shtick, and I remember I was always very funny and I was always very good, but the bottom line was I wasn't real, And as the years progress as an actor, you have to tap into yourself, do a backstory on every character, and that helps the reality.
No, I agree. It dives into the character. You're no longer acting; you are that character. And that's definitely what you've done with John Kreese, for sure. Question for you here: if Prodigal Son characters entered the Cobra Kai dojo, who would win in a showdown? The Man in Black with his gunslinging versus John Kreese's karate.
Well, you have to remember that karate is only useful when you're close. You try to defend yourself against a bullet. The guy stands 10, 15 feet back. Unless you're Bruce Lee or that wonderful fellow Brandon Lee who played
The Crow.
No, not that Brandon. Who played in Cobra Kai, played Quan.
Oh.
His father was the national champion of Korea. So this kid was brilliant. Could jump up and spin 360s and come down. Unless you're those guys that are that fast, you'll lose to the gunslinger because he'll just pull his. If the gunslinger wanted to fist fight you, you'd kick his ass.
Okay. And Gunslinger is way mean. Gunslinger is way meaner. When you read it, you'll see.
Yeah, you remember karate is only used when you have to. John Kreese taught it as a offensive sport, while Miyagi taught it as a defensive art. Miyagi taught it as a defensive art, while John Kreese taught it as an offensive sport. And that was the difference, So, answer your question, probably the gunfighter would have won. But if they got close, I think John Kreese would have won. Because John Kreese, there was no limit to John Kreese.
I think John Kreese could clear the distance. If you could revisit one movie set from your career, whether it be Rambo or Karate Kid, to change or add something small, what would it be?
You mean a set that I worked on?
Yes.
The greatest regret I ever had in my career, and I would love to rejuvenate it. I was hired to play Gentleman Jim Corbett in Tom Horn, a week's worth work with Steve McQueen. And the offer came in. I just arrived to see my parents in Queens, New York, and I get the call, you've got to come back tomorrow. And I didn't want to break my parents' heart. This is like 1977, 78. I didn't have the courage to say, Ma, I got to go, you know. So I turned it down. And to this day, I know that I would have been friends with Steve McQueen. I would have had a week's work with him, fight scenes, the whole deal. But I would have hit it off with him because he was my idol. And whenever I talk to people that I really respect, I don't ever go up and say, hey, I'm a big fan. I loved you in this movie. I always talk about cinema. And half the time when I work with DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, we talk, especially, DiCaprio had a set of Western posters from Europe that I have, the same ones, big posters, all done by The Ugly for a few dollars more. So I would always talk business. I would talk cinema. I wouldn't talk gaga goo goo, I'm a fan. So I knew I could have been friends with this guy. And that's what I would change. I would change that day that I refused the role. I would take it. And my parents would have loved me to go back there, do a movie with Steve McQueen, and they wouldn't have held. I would have come to visit them a couple of weeks later. But at the moment, I was too sensitive that I was just visiting them, and I had to turn it down. What a dumb thing.
Well, I'd like to say that I don't think you've made a bad decision because everything brought you to where you are, and to the roles that you've gotten. But I totally understand how that one eats away at you. To be able to go back and be like, I could have spent a week with McQueen, like that would have been. I mean, my gosh, that would have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So here we got two questions left for you, and then we'll be done for the night. You've been in over 80 films, whether it be cameos or full roles. What's a movie that you've been in that you wished people knew more about?
There was a movie, God, no, I can't think of the title. Doug McClure's daughter produced it, and it was it was a movie we shot in Armagosa Opera House in Death Valley, and God, I wish I could remember the name. And we shot it there, and I was hired as a hitman to be her husband. And I went to the director and I said, I just don't. I want to play a subplot. I want this guy to want to be Dion of Dion and the Belmonts. And I found a book about Dion and his life. And the dream for this hitman was to give a concert in Central Park and hire two helicopters with speakers and just have him up in the chopper singing, Little Diane, singing, Born to Cry, singing, Run Around Sue, singing these songs and have it peppered down into the sheep meadow of Central Park. And he was really, the subplot was that this guy who was the hitman in the movie, her husband, the male lead, that his real life was to become a rock and roll star. And what I did was I played, I carried a microphone around with me everywhere in this movie. The director loved it. It ended up on HBO, I think, but I can't remember the name. I don't know why I can't remember the name. But I wish people had seen that because there were shades of Pulp Fiction in that. There were shades of just charming love for music. There were shades of this guy being a cold killer. There were shades of his sidekick kills the wrong guy, and he does these antics that are right out of Pulp Fiction, you know, that are all black comedy. And I wish, you know, I wish that
Trance? Was it Trance?
France. Very good. Very good. Very good. Get that computer just works the new brain.
Yeah, it does. Hey, well, that's why we use it.
That trance was really interesting, All and I took the kids. They came and I took them up to Las Vegas, and they were 7, and they, you know, because from Death Valley we went to Las Vegas, and it was hysterical. It was just one of those movies that you wish people had seen more of, and it was, it was a good little piece. Good little piece.
Well, we'll have to check. I'll put that one on my list to check out. We have a question from Chris here. Do you plan on getting any bucks this fall?
Do I plan on say it again?
He asks if you plan on going hunting this fall.
Well, I don't really hunt very much. I love guns. I do love guns, but the gun I love. I love crossbows. I love Winchesters, the old Henrys, and they're very sexy to shoot.
Oh yes, the lever actions.
Yeah, these older lever actions, they're so heavy that they don't have a big kick, and I just love going out with these old guns and 45s and Western models primarily. My son, he's brilliant in these movies with the paramilitary paraphernalia and the guns and the lightweight guns and all that. Um, but I don't hunt very much. I do enjoy, you know, um, I do enjoy the fantasy when I go through some of my older guns. Who used these and when? It's like
the
walking.
story.
It's like walking the railroad tracks. I love walking railroad tracks, and like you get to small towns where you're doing, I don't know, you're on location, and you're in Wisconsin, Warsaw, Wisconsin, doing a baseball movie, and all of a sudden there's a tracks, and you walk these railroad tracks, and you say to yourself, "Wow, did Jesse James ever rob a train on these tracks? Did Teddy Roosevelt take a railroad car and go over here during his political campaign?" You just think of who rode the train that rode on these tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is it's hunting, but it's hunting for historical information based on you know on old guns and old tracks and old props. When I made a movie in Russia, it was fantastic because these Russian actors were great. They didn't know what they were saying. They all memorized the word. They all memorized the word phonetically. So they would go, instead of saying "How are you," they would go, "How are you?" And they just didn't know. They didn't know, but they were great actors. And I remember working in an old studio in the 40s that was created in the 30s and 40s in Russia for their movie stars. And quite interesting. It's all gray and dark and all that, but it was fascinating to me to see the culture and the props, the makeup rooms, all the stuff that was. It just showed you what the past was like, because I really like the past. The future's cool.
Oh, oh, he's getting a phone call. Looks like a phone call came through. Oh, looks like a phone call came through, Paulie. He'll connect back in. Well, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, can't hear you, Marty. You got to switch your sound to your speaker. Let's see. Yeah, we can't hear you. It connected through. You got to click on the gear and go to iPhone. Hold on, let me try this. Of course, right at the end. No, I can't hear you. Hold on. Right at the end. Uh, you yeah we if you wanted to. I had one more question for you, Marty. If you shoot. Hold on. Let's see. Um. No, you might have to bounce out and come back in. Don't. Yeah, you might have to bounce out and come back in.
Shut it down, Marty, and just turn it back on.
Yeah, just jump back in and hit join with camera. It'll kick you right back in. No, it's just the connection because he's doing it on his iPad. So once he joins back in here, it'll correct itself. Um, but no, this so till Marty comes back in, the cigar's being really widely accepted. It's selling like crazy.
There he
Yep,
is.
hey, there you are, Marty. All
Yeah,
right, all
I
right.
went back to number one, redid everything again.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate you being willing to do that. Hopefully, it wasn't an important phone call.
No, no, just someone wanted to give me $12 million for the next Western, but no big deal.
Oh well, hey, I'm glad. Paulie will make it up to you. Don't worry, I promise. Checks in the mail. Well, my last question of the night to you, and I always ask this question. I attribute it to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio. Um, if and when the time comes that you meet your creator, whoever it might be, what do you want to hear?
There are so many songs, but I think that song that Barbara Streisand sings, "The Way We Were."
You want to hear the way we were?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many songs. I love Shirley Bassey. I love, Tina Turner. I love, you know, I just love Frank Sinatra. There's so many songs. Maybe, a standard would be My Way. You did it my way. These are very emotional songs. Um, I mean, there's so many. There's so many songs that meant so much. But I wouldn't want it to be depressing. I wouldn't want it to be a song that would be depressing. I would really, because the way we were could get a little depressing because you think about your relationships, you know, all throughout time, the way we were. I remember when the movie came out in 1973, I would always think about my relationship with this girl I lived with in New York before I moved to Hollywood. Then I would think about my relationship with my ex-wife, who was still extremely good friends, and then now I think about the relationship I have with my ex-girlfriend, and it, the memories are so good when you think about that song, the way we were. You don't get depressed because the relationship is over, like kind of the end of the movie, but we were just talking about this last night because of Robert Redford, and you think about the good moments that you had in each one of these relationships, the great times you had. So I think that song would be good because I would think about all the relationships I've had that had wonderful moments, especially the moment of giving my ex-wife giving birth to my twins. It just doesn't get better than that, you know.
I agree. I agree. And if you had one historical Western star or Western figure to have a cigar with, who would it be? Not actor. I mean actual historical figure in the Western world.
Wouldn't it be great to have a cigar with Davy Crockett?
Yes, yes, yes. Talk to him about the Alamo. Absolutely.
I was born on the day the Alamo fell. So I have an affinity. March 6th is my birthday, and I have an affinity to Texas, a metaphysical affinity to all of Texas. In fact, I'm doing a Comic Con there in the end of October in San Antonio. And I've probably taken this tour 10 times. And every time I go on the tour, I cry. It's just, I've got more Alamo cups and banners and plates and books, and yeah, to have a cigar with the real Davy Crockett, to find out what happened, you know, and what happened in the political world, what happened. He was a roamer. He wasn't a stay-home guy,
Mm-mm.
you know, at all. When you hear some of the real true facts about him, he was like Daniel Boone. They wandered. You know, they wandered. He wasn't a stay-home dad at all. It's when America was just all forest, and you know.
Oh, to kind of be what it'd be like to be back in those days. So, well, we are at time. I don't want to keep it too much longer here, but Paulie, can you kind of real quick go over what's going on in Malibu for the release, where to find the event at, and how to participate?
Yes, so next week, the 27th, Saturday, between 5 and 9 o'clock, we'll be showing up in between those hours at Malibu, across the street from Noble, Malibu Cigar Lounge. They were also featured uh, not so long ago on Cigar Aficionado. It is the most amazing, beautiful view, the terrace overlooking the water. Um, it's going to be a big happening. They're very excited to have Marty. Um, we'll be there next Saturday, but this is just one of the first. This is just a California drop. The drop that we'll have in New York at my place at the factory in New York will be announced in the next couple of weeks. But we'll be touring with the cigar. Me and Marty will be at the Big Smoke, courtesy of Cigar Aficionado, um, November 1st. And we have a few dates along the way in the months. But Marty's very busy with his own stuff. But you know, we have a lot of different projects in the works, like so many, and he's just great with my son. But he'll never forget to just call me up and say, "Hey, I heard that." There's a great show, Phantom of the Opera. You need to go see. Take your son. I mean, that's the type of guy he is. He's always my son loves it. So and
So,
it's like how many kids could say they hung out with their dad and Marty Kove at a Cobra Kai premiere, and overlooking L.A. at the Hustler Club, on the rooftop. How many kids could say that? So this is all pretty cool. Marty's a great dude, and we're very excited. LCGcigars.com. You could also go to Abe's Smoke Inn, and and we'll be going to the Smoke Inn
TGS.
in West Palm Beach. We'll be going there in the next couple of
Are
months.
you
We're
doing
doing
the Great Smoke as well?
Yes, we were at the Great Smoke last year.
Yep,
This year we'll
yep.
be there as vendors, and lcgcigars.com. You can go to Sanja's Smoke Shop. I think it's should you smoke this.com or Smoke In. You can get the cigars on any of those. If you get them from lcgcigars.com, I will sign a copy of the Cigar Aficionado magazine that dropped. I think it was today. That featured my store and my factory. I'll send that out with an extra cigar, and just it's one of the greatest cigars out there.
Oh,
I
it's an
know there's a
incredible
million, but
cigar.
this is a fantastic
No,
cigar.
it's a really I texted that out to Paulie when I first tried. It's a really really good cigar. I mean, it truly is, and it's one of those that I think it's going to hit to a lot of people's appeal. I've heard a lot of good people, a lot of good reviews on it so far from people buying it and smoking it. Paulie, hold up that box one more time. Let's show everybody that beautiful
Sure.
artwork.
Prodigal Son. If you call tomorrow, 718-364-4657, and order one of these, you'll get it signed. We'll get it out to you, signed. You'll get a signed copy of Cigar Aficionado. And you'll also, if you call up for a Bronx Tail cigar, Chaz will sign that box as well. If they mention the Rocky Mountain
Cigar
Cigar
Show.
Show.
So,
So
so mention
there
the
you go.
Rocky Mountain
Or go to
Cigar Show,
lcgcigars.com.
and you'll be able to give them a call tomorrow morning. You'll be mentioned the show. You'll be able to get a signed box of Prodigal Son from Martin Cove. And
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
going to be
We'll
in the
get 'em out to
Malibu
you.
area,
You just gotta be patient because we're not gonna see Marty till next week.
yeah, and if you're
If
going
you
to be in
place
the
that order, we'll have it done for you.
if you're going to be in the Malibu area, go get the box signed by the man himself. Take a picture with him. Living legend. Go meet him. Not only that, but just an amazing cigar connoisseur as well. Martin, this has been an absolute bucket list item for me. I never would have thought I would have had you on a show. Really means the world to me that you spent your night with me, and thank you. Hopefully, I gave you some questions that you haven't maybe heard before, or something that was a little bit new. But until we see you all again, smoke what you like, smoke as many fucking Prodigal Sons as you can, and have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.